All right, well, we will go ahead and get started. Thank you all for being here today. Welcome. My name is Jennifer Quiroz, and I'm the Executive Director of the Financial Empowerment Network, and I'm very happy that you're all here today. So we are here to talk about taxes. Woohoo, exciting topic. So we are going to be talking about the child tax credit and then answering some other tax questions that folks have raised over the last couple of months. And so we have with us Terrence with the United Way, and unfortunately Larry had something come up and so he will not be able to join us today. And please know that there will be time at the end for us to do some Q&A and also for all of you to share any updates and announcements from your organizations. So if you are not camera ready, get ready because we'll want you to join us so we can see everyone. So as we get started today, in the chat, please introduce yourself so we can all see who's here, where we're coming from. So if you could please share your name, your pronouns, where you work, what your role is, and if you'd like, your email address. So as I said, my name is Jennifer Quiroz. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm with the Financial Empowerment Network. Great. So I'm going to stop sharing and turn it over to Terrence. Thank you so much, Terrence, for being with us today.
Awesome, thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and do a screen share real quick to ensure that my equipment is working. Minimize this and sharing the screen. So thank you so much for the introduction, Jennifer. My name is Terrence Cabiao. I'm with United Way King County. I'm a program coordinator there on the free tax preparation campaign. Our objective today, I'm gonna give you all a quick introduction about VITA and what we're all about and the reasons why we exist, and also talk about the tax season in general, what has happened with COVID-19 and how that has changed the landscape, and go into some of the models that our agency will be using going into tax season 22 to maximize some of these powerful anti-poverty tax credits and really try to eliminate barriers for some of our clients that had used this precious resource. And talk about some of those tools that has come up, such as the advanced child tax credit that we all want to learn about, the economic impact payment, and the unemployment tax overpayment. And there's also some resources that I would like to share at the end of this presentation as well. And we'll go to about 9:40 or 10:40 or earlier, so we'll have some time for questions as well and agency announcements. So unfortunately, Larry is not here. Larry is one of our VITA tax site managers. So VITA stands for Volunteer Income Tax Assistance. It's an IRS program, which I'll talk about later. But Larry has been with us for 20 plus years. So if there's any questions that I'm not able to address, I'll make sure to forward that to my colleague. And his email is there, and he's always open to answer anything that you might have that is tax related. And that is my contact information there as well, if you need to get a hold of me regarding pragmatic tax vision, things like that. All right, I want to get us started through framing our minds real quick. My personality, I like to keep things fun. And looking at this picture, this just brings up a lot of thoughts and ideas of why VITA exists. So when I speak about VITA, VITA stands for Volunteer Income Tax Assistance. We do taxes for free, right? But why do we do that? And when you think about taxes, it's not a common thing, right? You don't just go to college. You don't just learn taxes all of a sudden. Like, I have a master's degree. but my wife has been doing my taxes all my life because I've been afraid to touch taxes. And and that's just in my situation. Other people have different situations. And if you add stress to it, right, there's fear that comes out of taxes. And, you know, what does Yoda say in one of the old Star Wars films? I'm a Star Wars nerd, but like fear leads to the dark side, right? So you can take advantage of that. And for-profit entities exist, and this is just a picture that was taken from Creative Commons, but like the issue with for-profit entities is that they do want to make a lot of money out of this, and there is no difference regarding, you know, if me and someone else has the same tax situation, right? Like we work the same job, we're W-2s, our expenses are the same, our habits with, you know, giving money or medical things that we expense are the same. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter who you go to. If I owe money, I'll owe the same amount of money, or if I'm expecting a refund, I would get the exact same amount of refund, regardless if I went to a free tax preparer or if I went to a person like a nonprofit organization that's like, hey, I'll do your taxes for free, and talk to a tax law expert or tax law certified preparer. The outcomes will be the same thing. It's taxes, it's a black and white type situation. And for-profit entities do utilize the scare tactics because it's expensive. And I remember being in college, and I did go to a for-profit entity because I was working at Best Buy. Shout out to anyone who worked retail, but I worked at Best Buy between classes, and I was like, oh my gosh, I got my first W-2. What am I supposed to do with this? I went to a for-profit entity that was down the block because I was in a retail center, and I remember spending about $150 for a part-time work. Right? So that $150 can go a long ways for some families. And usually you don't, and also the piece here with for-profit entities is that if you do get a refund, which I did in this particular situation, you don't even get to see the cost, right? It's not like, hey, give me your credit card and I'll charge you $150 up front. They usually pull that from your refund if you're entitled to one. So you'll never get, you know, you don't see that transaction, which makes it seem like it's, hey, they did it. And it was easy, but there was a cost associated with it. So going to the next piece here, this is what VITA is all about. So volunteer income tax assistance, it's a partnership between organizations and the IRS. So VITA in its particular form has been around for 50 years. The United Way of King County has been doing this for 20 years. And we know for-profit entities has been doing this for a long time, right? The whole trade and sales and whatnot, it's been around for a very long time. But 50 years ago, the IRS came together and was like, you know what? We got to offer this program where nonprofit entities like mine are able to raise some volunteers who are dedicated to this work in terms of financial stability, anti-poverty, and get them trained into tax law. So they get certified into tax law. And in our case, we've been doing it for 20 years. So the pictures that I have here displayed, it's just what it was like pre-COVID. You know, people are smiling, people are friendly, but the impetus behind this is that every single person is a tax law certified individual through the IRS. And regardless if you see someone within this program or a for-profit entity, the outcomes are always the same based off the information that you provide. And going into COVID-19, you know, there's been a lot of changes. So there's so many models, right? So this model that's shown here, this is a traditional model. It's brick and mortar, right? Like H&R Block, you go to the mall, you see signages and you go through a process and you sit in front of a person. That model exists. There's now also virtual models where you're able to see these beautiful people online. And that's that's where VITA sits today when it comes to COVID-19 and responding to that. And agencies like ours and 200, 400 across the nation has been essentially forced to really communicate, talk about best practices, and really think through, hey, what this next season is supposed to look like. So that's a good leeway into tax season 2022. And I want to reframe our minds real quick again to some of the data points, especially Seattle King County, when we talk about poverty. So homelessness continues to grow 26% year over year, which is huge. And we know unemployment is skyrocketing. And at United Way of King County, we have so many different programs, not just taxes. We have our hunger teams, we have our rent assistance teams, and we see large demands in each of these teams. With taxes, what is huge in terms of the last year and a half working through COVID-19 and the situation it presented, it made a lot of people shut down back in March of 2020. I remember I was brand new to my agency then, and I just trained like 50 new volunteers around March, like the beginning of March. March 1st is when they graduated in tax law. And by March 6th, we ended up sending them all that email that said, hey, unfortunately, due to the safety and the concerns and an abundance of safety, we had to close down. And yeah, it's been about a year and a half since then, right? And there's been a lot of learnings, which means that we've piloted our first in-person sites back in March this year. So 1 year went by, it was successful. We were at the Seattle Goodwill. Shout out to the Seattle Goodwill Dearborn for offering that space. So we had huge HEPA filters and volunteers who wanted to do this pilot with us and really test out all of these new safety best practices with the plastic spit guards and doing the temperature checks and whatnot. And we intend to use that going to next season. So it was a big change from typically having 30 to 40 sites every year pre-COVID and seeing up to 30,000 clients pre-COVID. And each of these, when I say 30 to 40 sites, right, this is not like H&R Block where we're renting just small, renting space and leasing space. This is the work of all the community-based organizations who we work with, right? The power through that is that they have established trust in all of these clients that go through them for other things that's not just taxes, but it just makes it more convenient to add those additional access points for them. And it's like, hey, they're already going there to see a case manager, might as well do some taxes as well, right? So going into next season, our end state that we're trying to achieve is that we're trying to see if we can take all of these learnings that we learned a year and a half, all of these great partnerships, all these best practices, and try to get big again, try to offer as many access points as possible. The barriers that we learned in regards to virtual is that it was just such a, it was a large challenge. It's hard to say, I can't even put a word to it because the barriers existed and it was just so high, right? For example, a client, when we do the in-person tax service, they're able to get their taxes done there and then. But in virtual, there's a whole process where it's like you have to find the website, you have to have an email, you have to be able to be capable of scanning your documents, you need to be able to upload them, and they need to be readable from a volunteer standpoint that's on the other end of that virtual stream. And that's hard to do on top of taxes already being complicated, right? There's some missing documents. So we did see a huge dip, and that kind of informed the reason why we want to increase the access points for our clients. So going into the next slide, this kind of sets us up for our models of service, because that will speak through all of those different access points. So if you think of us as a restaurant, all right, this is our menu. It's not just this is the one meal that you get. It's a whole variety of stuff for all types of clients and the different ways they can access us. So virtual will always be a part now, more than ever, with safety. You know, we have the growing variants like the Mu variant, the MU1, or the Delta variant. We know that there's a lot of uncertainty. So with virtual services, this will allow us to at least have some sort of avenue for a client who's capable to see a virtual volunteer. And what's beautiful about having this year and a half to look at the program and make improvements to it is that this virtual is working towards improving. And sometimes this month or so, I'm gonna sit down with a product manager, and they're going to say, "Hey, Terrence, what exactly do you need to see?" All right. I mean, there's about 600 other VITA programs across the country that's doing this. They're in partnership with a company called Code for America. They're an entity out of California. They're amazing. They give you all the onboarding, all of the training. I remember back in March of 2020 when we did shut down, that entity reached out to us and we had a conversation, and they were able to get me and a couple of my colleagues onboarded into this platform within 2 weeks. It was fast, and we were able to get our first client through the process within a week from the week that we were all set up. So this system is totally secure. It's IRS certified. They had to go through the certification process to ensure that the upload requirements meet the security parameters. This allows the tax preparer to prepare, and it's very flexible going to next season. There's fully virtual. There's also some drop-off models for a client who just doesn't want to sit down because of the safety issue. They'll drop off some documents. That's a possibility. And we could work with other of the we can take advantage of a lot of that trainings as well, because you could also do scan only options, right? So that's a low lift. We had a partnership with a senior center last year where their clients obviously can't leave the senior center, and they were wondering like, hey, what's the solution for this? And we essentially trained the front desk person there who was capable of this to scan every single person's documents that was in that senior center. And we dedicated some resources, so some volunteers and a site manager that was specific on that task. And I think the community had about 250 clients there, which we did our final like thank yous just a few months ago. So that's one of the beauties of virtual. So going to that in the spirit of making sure that we have all these additional access points, is we're communicating with our community-based organizations again. So if you're a community-based organization and you have worked with us in the past, you probably already have received some emails from us. And a lot of this is still being set in stone. Our timeline for having this full menu finalized will be sometimes the first week of October. And that will essentially help us kick off our volunteer recruitment, because we need to know the sites that are available and what the time parameters are in order to carve out those shifts. But that's going to be a big piece of next season, because on top of virtual, some clients just want to see people in person, right? They've been a victim of identity theft. That's something that we can't forget. There's some folks that just doesn't trust the virtual process, uploading their social security card, their ID, their W-2s. a lot of the folks that's in this space get taken advantage of by entities pretending to be, hey, I'll help you if you give me your social security card number and your driver's license, right? Like, and we train them to ensure that they approach those stuff, you know, safely, and they ask questions, right? So sometimes you'll have clients that just want in-person engagements, and that's what this is going to solve, which is amazing. Seattle Central Library, you know, high production site, Orion Multi-Service Center. So shout out to those sites in South End. We have the Hope links that are not shown on this slide, but they're up on the north side. So we're trying to, if you look at King County as a map, we're trying to have spots regionally. And a lot of these sites that were formerly high demand and high production are the ones that we're really trying to invest time in to ensure that we have those access points for the clients. And then the third piece is regarding our training or learnings from COVID. Like, we know shopping malls never shut down, right? People will always need to buy toilet paper. People need to go buy their sodas. But we're looking at South Center Mall, Kent Mall, and different halls to explore the possibility of having a couple of these spaces that's available 7 days a week from 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock, 8 o'clock to 5 o'clock, regular business hours, in areas where they already invested a lot in terms of safety, the stickers on the floor that keep people, you know, socially distanced, things like that. Really maximizing the access points for our clients. All right, so now, you know, we get clients through the doors. Let's talk about like some of the products that we're going to give them, right? So these are the anti-poverty tools that I'm talking about. You know, our mission essentially is using these anti-poverty tools to lift people out of poverty. So something new for 2021 is our advanced child tax credit. So this is going to kind of explain what this is all about, so you're able to have the muscle memory to speak about this if it comes up. But always feel free to forward any questions to me or Larry at the end of this presentation. So the new advanced child tax credit, it's new this year, and I have some scenarios that we can run through in a couple slides from now. But essentially, the old advanced child tax credit had a cap of $1,400 per child. And last year, right, you have to file your tax return, and it just shows up as part of your refund. So if you owed money, whatever you owed, it'll be minus the cap, the $1,400, and you would get that access as your refund. But there's been a lot of changes to it. So it has always been around. So a lot of clients will see this, but it's like if they've done their taxes in the past, the process to obtain it has changed slightly, essentially. So the top three requirements here, so expanding eligibility to 17-year-olds, making the credit fully refundable, and no minimum income requirement. That is three big things, because no minimum income requirement, right? There's also, if you think about taxes, which is not part of this presentation in terms of like doing your taxes. There is income requirements in terms of if I make more than this amount, I am required to file, right? So there's people that fall underneath that might have family. So that's why the no minimum income requirement might be an important piece there. And then making the credit fully refundable. So the meat is really about this fully refundable, and what does that look like? So this piece here could be a little bit confusing, all right? So I'm just gonna read the middle right here. The payment will be up to $300 per month for each qualifying child under the age of under age 6, and up to $250 per month for anyone that is between 6 and 17, all right? So let me look at my notes here real quick so I can make sure I bring this up. When we said it's fully refundable, your total amounts. So if you're taking notes, feel free. If it's if your child is between 6 to 17, your total refund that's refundable is $3,000. Okay, so just put that on your notes. And then if your child is age anything below 6, so 5 and younger, right, your total refund is $3,600. All right, so let's take my example. I have 2 kids. They're both under 6. All right, my oldest is 3 years old, toddler, and then the youngest is 10 months. So my full refund going into just the advanced child tax credit should be $3,600 for each. Okay, so what essentially what they're doing here, and why this is called the advanced child tax credit, is that they're advancing you the first half. So what's half of 3,600 for me, right? $1,800. So my oldest Silas, my youngest Athena, that is $1,800. $1,800 for them. That's going to be advanced. You divide that by 6, that's your $300. So, and if I did my tax return, which I did back in February of this year, because that's when I came back from paternity leave, my payment started in July 15. Then the next one was August 13, and then the last one was September 15, and now I'm anticipating, right, a payment of $600 for October 15. So by December 15, I would have had $3,600 direct deposited to me, which was essentially half of the child tax credit for both of my kids. And the next half, right, it's still there with the IRS. I have to wait for me to file my next tax return. So starting in January, when our season kicks off, I will get Larry and be like, Larry, I need you to do my taxes. And when Larry does my taxes, I'll get the next half. All right. So there's some scenarios here because there might be some questions that might come up here. Like, what if you have a client that didn't do their tax return yet, and it's now September 30th? Like, what happens, right? So those might be some questions that might come up regarding the new advanced child tax credit. So let me go to the next slide so we can cover those scenarios that might come up. Now let's just start from the top here. So this is just kind of talking about the eligibility for 17 years old. What does that really mean, right? So as long as your child does not turn 18 before January 1st, 2022, that is the IRS definition for that particular piece. What if I don't have a social security number? Well, guess what? You're in luck, right? United Way of King County, we have partnerships, and some other VITA programs have partnerships too with banks, and with banks there's a certain financial folks have these certifications, Series 6, Series 2022, and I can get you stock markets or whatnot. There's something called a certified CAA certified official. For some reason, I'm blanking on what that means, but they're able to get you something called an ITIN, stands for individual tax identification number. It is designed for people who are undocumented, and some folks are afraid to do it. So if you have a client that's afraid to do it, just like the census and all this stuff, there's so much protections behind it that's built in. So like ICE, for example, cannot just come in and be like, hey, you're an ITIN holder, you're undocumented. That's not how it works. And I've worked in the government sector. Prior to this, I was in the intelligence sector. People take those type of stuff seriously, right? If the law says you cannot utilize this particular piece that's collected, like the ITIN or the census, government entities respect that, because you get in trouble if you trespass those things. But essentially behind that, let's say you are an ITIN holder, you don't have a social security number. Advanced child tax credit does not care about that particular piece. They care if your child has a valid social security number. So if your child has a social security number and you don't have a social security number, you qualify for this. Okay. So that's just something to keep in mind for clients when you speak with them. And how about the scenario? So third bullet here. What if in 2019 I didn't qualify, but in 2020 I'm eligible, right? Well, then the main thing is it's it's either or, right? They're looking at your 2019 tax return, if you qualified. If you did not, your 2020 tax return, if you qualified, then you'll qualify and you'll receive that particular payment. So there are some folks who did hold off on doing their tax return, right? In the next few slides, I'm gonna talk about the economic payment. It kind of follows the same suit. Like it's looking at your 2018 or your 2019. It's either or. So if it's either of those years you qualified, you will get the payment. And if your payment was not issued, it's the same thing. File a tax return, because that's the only way that the IRS will be able to see you and get you the payment. And with that said, per IRS on their website, the way that it works is that, let's say I didn't do my tax return and I'm like, oh yeah, I want some money for my kids, like, and I do it now and I get it done tomorrow, right? Then payment will just assume the next month on October 15th, and I would receive it. And then we can expect that the rest of the payments will just be retroactive for the ones that I missed, okay? So
what just to clarify that, you mean that when you file your taxes in 2022, then you would receive not only the half of the payment, but also the payments for July, August, and September? That's
also another piece. So right now is if I did my taxes tomorrow, because I didn't do my 2020 and my youngest, right, was born in November. So that my 2019 return does not have that data. I will get the advanced child tax credit for my oldest because he would have appeared in my 2019. And after tomorrow, because I have essentially updated my records. I did a 2020 tax return and it has my youngest daughter on it. The October 15 advance payment should now be 600 instead of 300 because now it has Athena's advanced child tax credit on it. And the rest of the payments, like for Athena, should also be paid retroactively. And if not, because that's a possibility when we talk about the economic payment, there's some people who did not receive payment. They're just like, oh yeah, I did my taxes and I'm not receiving any advanced child tax credit right now. I have 3 kids that qualify, right? Just like this year, for the first and second rounds of the economic impact payment, your stimulus payments, your tax preparer will be able to ask you, hey, did you receive your, and this is my pretend clipboard, did you receive your economic payment? Did you receive your advanced child tax credit, right? And anything that's deficient, any shortages, you'll be able to apply in your 2022 tax return. There hasn't been any verbiage on that, but that's what we're anticipating because why reinvent the wheel? That's what they're doing for the economic impact payment. That's a great question. Thanks for the question there. And the last bullet point here is, what if I'm divorced and I have no parenting plan, right? That does exist. I've had clients in that particular situation, right? So in the IRS, the best guidance that I'm able to provide in this particular situation is that it's always dependent on the situation, right? If there's no parenting plan, one of the top situations that I run into is like, I do someone's tax return, they claim their dependents, and I e-file it, I electronically file it. Guess what happens? It gets rejected. And what's good about getting the rejection, I guess, lack for a better word, with these rejections, it gives you a little code. Just like your car, if your car gets like, there's something wrong with your car and you take it to like the mechanic and they run diagnostics, right? They run that code and you're like, what does this code mean, right? And they put it in another machine and they're able to say, hey, the code means that your air throttle something, this particular device, you need to repair it for $1,000, right? Similar with the IRS, right? They'll give you a reject code and it will tell you like, hey, those social security numbers have been claimed. And typically, most of the time, it's like, oh my gosh, maybe it's identity theft. That's one possibility because someone must know their social security number, their birthdays, how their name is spelled. Like they have all of these checks, or all of a sudden it's like, oh, it was that person. They knew, they beat me to the punch, right? And that's typically what happens. It's going to be who beats you to the punch and getting something e-filed and accepted prior to the individual who's claiming a dependent, right? But guess what? There's certain definitions. It's not just beat them to the punch. And yeah, I get the advanced child tax credit. No, in order to be a real dependent, that's not shown in this slide here, is that you need to have, it's black and white, it's an IRS definition. You need to have provided more than half of all of their support, more than 6 months of their support, right? So at the end of the day, the IRS, at the end of the day, what I would have done in my agency, we would have done a paper file. It's the old school method. It's not an e-file, because we know e-file is going to be a rejection. And we would submit that to the IRS, so we know that's in transit. Then I would have recommended the client to call the IRS phone number. And when they are able to engage, because once the paper file goes through, and give the IRS like, hey, just heads up, this is the situation, there's going to be some conversations between you and the IRS and the other party, right? And they're going to ask for proof. So that's essentially what's going to happen, is if you're able to provide the proof, yo, my child lived with me for this entire year, I paid for all of this, right? There's going to be a judgment that's made from the IRS, and that's typically how that's addressed. And typically, if there is a parenting plan and someone's committing fraud, or that goes into a different direction. Somebody committed fraud, and you let the IRS know, and they'll take care of business, and you'll get your advanced child tax credit. So that's the piece there that I wanted to provide regarding that. Oh, did not know my mouse did that. All right, so economic impact, maybe. The last piece here, is regarding the stimulus payments, essentially. And what I want to provide here is that there was 3 big rounds, right? So the first round was, it happened around March or April of 2020. It was $1,200 for individuals, $2,400 for married filing jointly, and $500 for every qualifying child. The big piece regarding this is that some people had come to our tax sites and were like, hey, I'm not receiving the stimulus check. What's going on? And we look at their tax record or their tax return and how it was prepared. You can't be claimed as a dependent, right? So if I'm a college student and my mom and dad claimed me as a dependent and I'm expecting $1,200, that's not going to happen, because mom and dad got $500 by claiming me as a dependent. So that's just some guidance over there in terms of some of the questions that might come up regarding that. And then the second round happened around December of 2020. I was on paternity leave around that time, but $600 per individual. And then the most generous one happened about March of 2021. And this was big because I have 2 kids, right? $1,400 per child, $1,400 for me and $1,400 for the spouse. So that was a big chunk of change. The reason why I'm putting this up here is that there's a lot of people who is missing out on these, right? And I'll go into the next slides real quick to talk about that, because qualification is pretty generous for this. You got to be a U.S. citizen or U.S. resident. You can't be making more than these gross incomes. This is your limit, right? And you cannot be claimed as a dependent on another taxpayer. You get automatic payments if you do your taxes, or if you fall in these buckets here, right? Social Security recipients, Veteran Affairs, Railroad Retirement recipients. You get automatic payments, but there are people who do fall through the cracks, is what the big piece that I want to kind of announce in this forum. There was a article that came out from the Census Bureau budget policy a year ago. It hasn't been updated, but it was saying about 12 million people across the nation is at risk of missing out of these payments because they don't fall into this particular situation, but they qualified for SNAP benefits, right? So there's a income that they're making, that and they made the analysis, and essentially was like, wow, these people don't make enough money, right, to do taxes, right? Because there's a minimum requirement of like $12,000 if you're a single filer, $12,400 for this particular year. But like if you don't meet those minimum requirements and you don't fall in these automatic payments, then you fall through the cracks essentially. And that's where we come in, is because in order to have received these payments, then is that you would have to have filed your tax return. So you'd have to file a tax return, not being required to file it in order to do this. At the end of the day, those tax returns are really easy to do, and it's essentially a $1 tax return. And when we say that, it's because the IRS doesn't allow us to submit a zero income tax return. So we say, yeah, this person made $1 or something, right? You don't pay taxes on the $1, but it gets them into the system so they can get their payments. And this is going to be the exact same method for advanced child tax credit as well. So with that said, there's still a lot of options to get your taxes done. For 2020, if you go to our website, it's freetaxexperts.org. We're doing virtual services through October. So right now, if they are in the process of freetaxexperts.org on our website, you'll see a link that gets the clients to get your refund.org. That's the website that was created by Code for America. They'll be able to do their taxes virtually. The best option, fastest option, is just come see a tax preparer in person. That would cover everything from economic impact payment, advanced child tax credit, all those questions to make sure that someone is at least they get set up correctly. El Centro de la Raza on Beacon Hill. That's the name of the cultural center, and this is our address. Essentially, we're there every Tuesdays from 2 p.m. to 7 p.m. and we're going to be there until October 26th. That would be the last Tuesday. And we have really increased our number of volunteers and our site managers at that particular effort. Traffic has been medium. We can deal with a surge of traffic. With that said, the best way to describe it is if someone has gone to El Centro de la Raza before, it's a big space. They've revamped that area on the Beacon Hill station, and there used to be the old classroom where our VITA program used to be in. We're not there anymore. So I like to direct people, go find the food. There's like a plaza out there with the pizza. There's like a ceviche, like outdoor stand. And there's the statue of Roberto Maestra. So you find the statue, you find the pizza, you find the ceviche. That's where you are. Our signages are all over that place. And you'll be able to find Larry or me there at El Centro de la Raza. All right. So that's that piece. And this is just additional information about what if I don't have a filing requirement? What if I don't want to go in person? What if I want to do virtual, but I don't really want to interact with anybody? There are tools out there that exist, right? There was something called the Nonfilers tool. I meant here in red is something that I wanted to kind of highlight regarding these type of tools. Some folks sometimes don't have a filing requirement, right? They make less than $12,400 this year and they're single, right? But what happens if I'm a W-2 employee? What happens most of the time? I'm giving money away because I will fill out that W-9. The W-4 with my HR. And I'm like, I have this many amount of dependents or whatnot. There's this thing called a withholding, right? So most of the time, if you have a withholding and you're under the filing requirement, so you don't need to file, you're shooting yourself in the foot if you're not getting your withholdings back, essentially. And that happens a lot, unfortunately, because a lot of people are like, I don't have a filing requirement. Why do it? Yeah, but you have $200 or $500 that's like with the IRS. And with that said, right, and this is what I like to tell volunteers and clients is what happens 5 years from now if you have that withholding and you never filed for it, right? Well, the IRS will say that, hey, you've forgone interest. You don't want that money anymore. and you are unable to. Like my tax preparers, if I see someone from 2017 who has a refund owed, I can't give it back to them, unfortunately, because that money is no longer being dispersed. But what happens 5 years from now or 10 years from now if I owed money, right, to the IRS? You'll always owe money to the IRS, unfortunately. There's no way to be like, hey, you forgone interest at IRS, unfortunately. That's not the world. That's not how the IRS world works. But here, there's the website here. If you are a client or you know a client who is sure that they have no filing. They don't have any withholdings. They also don't have a filing requirement. GetCTC.org is going to help the individual get that child tax credit or any stimulus payments or corrections that are owed. All right. What's beautiful about this is that it's all automatic. Code for America, the entity that we work with in California, worked with the White House, worked with some of these extensive engineers, and they created a product where, as long as you don't have any filing requirements, and in addition to you don't have any withholdings, they'll be able to get your correction or get your tax return done using this link. And it will require essentially same thing that you would need if you see someone in person: social security card, your driver's licenses, and you need to be able to do the upload process and all of that. But only use this tool if you have not filed a return, right? Because it will be a rejection because it was like, hey, you filed something that was already accepted or something that was rejected and you're in the process of correcting. And if you did need to file for a withholding, this is not the tool for it. A client will end up needing to do an amendment, which just puts them in it didn't solve the solution, right? Maybe they got their stimulus payment, but there's still $200 out there that they need to amend in order to get that money. So it wasn't the ideal end state for that individual.
Hey, Terrence.
Yes.
We have a couple of questions in the chat. The first one is, how many years back can you file for a refund?
Right now it's 2017. No, I'm sorry about that. 2018. 2017, we got the announcement from the IRS back in February that they'll give you a time limit most of the time. And the way that it played out was like by February 21st or something, all 2017 refunds are no longer, we can no longer pay those out or something. But so right now it's just 2018 refunds.
Great. Thank you for that. And the next question is there a way for individuals to check to see if they still have EIP? Like, does the IRS have an option on their website to look that up?
There is. So on the IRS website, you're able to create an account. And essentially it's if you go to IRS Get My Payment, that essentially gives you your account makeup, and it will tell you up to date what has been dispersed. Or there's also something called a IRS like receipt, like a tax receipt, and they're able to give you all the essentially every return or any amount you've had paid in the last few years as well. That will give you that will shed some insight on that. So I did that for myself actually this year. It is a little bit complicated because it doesn't tell you actually, oh, this is from the economic impact or the child tax credit. You got to calculate it because it'll give you just the raw numbers. And the thing is, at the end of the day, if you think that the IRS owes you money and you look at your direct deposit, you don't see it, just send it in, right? If you talk to the tax preparer, be like, yeah, I don't think I got the $1,200, because at the end of the day, if the IRS looks at it, put it on them, and they will make the correction for you and let you know, because they'll send you the receipt. Essentially, the best way to know that if you received any of these payments is that the IRS, the White House, actually is sending out letters, right? I received a letter from the White House that was kind of official. Actually, I thought I was going on deployment because I'm a reservist right now. I was like, oh no, what's going on? And I was like, oh, child tax credit. It was essentially confirmation that they had dispersed it to you. And if you did receive one of those and you do not have confirmation, like you look at your direct deposit and you're like, I don't have this. There's something called a payment trace. So they're taking some learnings from COVID, but that's what they call it officially. It's called a payment trace. So when you call the IRS based off that phone number that I provided there, that's what you're going to request, and there's official paperwork for it, and they're able to create it for you. Then they'll send you that letter again, but they'll let you know at this point, like, you know, what account has it been like submitted to, or you'll have the option to cancel that check, and then they'll cut you a new check if the address was wrong, whatnot.
Great, thank you, Terrence. It is 10:51.
Oh.
And there is another question in the chat, and that was about the virtual VITA assistance. And the question is it only for folks that live in King County, or can folks outside of King County access that assistance?
Anyone outside of King County can access that assistance. The virtual assistance will be accessible for everybody in Washington State. it's tied to our zip codes. So if it's out, if you have a zip code that's outside of our whatever we submitted to Code for America, there's other VITA programs, right? There's 600 of us across the country. Obviously, I would love to have secured you because that allows us to submit, our grants and our metrics and things like that. But you would be connected to a VITA program that is local to you, essentially.
Great. For the unemployment tax overpayment, I'm not sure if there is a resource you can, maybe we could just skip to the resources so we have just a couple minutes at the end for any other Q&A and for a couple of announcements.
No, absolutely. So we'll have this presentation available. This piece was actually something that was that Larry was going to talk about, but essentially what it's saying is that the first $10,200 is untaxable, and there was also a refund, so it was going to be automatic. The IRS, there was no lift on the agency or the client. So you just, if you got taxed on it again next season, right, you might be able to be like, hey, I never got my refund back based off the unemployment tax. And Larry would probably be the best person to talk about that. With all that said, here's our resources. This is the Taxpayers Advocacy Service website. So this is a local phone number. And this is for folks who might have issues like that situation where, hey, my ex-spouse had claimed my dependents and I need to figure things out. I can't afford a lawyer, all of that type of stuff. This is the organization whom you want to connect with to get you set up. That question regarding the economic impact payment and the advanced child tax credit, this is the link to get my payment. They haven't changed that URL, but that will actually essentially give you that profile and be like, oh my gosh, this is all the payments that you have received in the last 5 years. So you'll be able to see if you've got the payments or not. And then this is what they call the Child Tax Credit Update Portal. So this is the website here. And this essentially is like that getctc.com website. The IRS created their own tool. Getctc.com website will be a little bit better because you have some programmers behind that. But here you have the additional option to see if you have a client. I don't want to get my advanced child tax credits prepaid. I want all $3,000 or $3,600 later, right? This is the portal where you're able to update that information, or update your direct deposit information, things like that, or address. And again, that's the 1-800 phone number to the IRS. And the last piece here is just concluding with, hey, come to El Centro del Raza at the end of the day, right? If you really need to, if a client needs to see someone and then they have a complicated situation, come see a person, one of our tax experts. They can get you through that Get My Payment website. They got the capabilities. They can, if you don't know if you got the economic impact payment or the advanced child tax credits and it's not clear from your direct deposits or whatnot, and you didn't get those letters, they can help you get through that Get My Payment website, and they'll be able to connect the dots for you and let you know. And then going into next season 22, best place to conclude is that website, freetaxexperts.org. That's where the latest updates will occur. So please keep an eye out as you work with clients through the next few months before the season starts. With that, thank you so much. I hand it back to you, Jennifer, or if there's any questions or any agencies out there, I am on the line for you. Thank you.
Okay, there we go. So the slide deck is available, and I put a link in the chat. If it's not working, I will be sending out a follow-up email. It'll come from Eventbrite, so keep an eye out for that, and it will have the slide deck in it. I also just put in the chat a SurveyMonkey link. We really appreciate your feedback on this presentation, but also ideas for future presentations. So if you could take a couple of minutes and work on that while I am sharing some other announcements from the network, that would be super helpful. Just want to remind folks that the Bank on Washington Forum is happening next month, October 19th and 20th. We have a fantastic lineup of speakers, and it's 2 half days fully virtual. So, from the comfort of your home office or wherever you happen to be. And there is a discount for nonprofits, and the code is there, ChangeCounts21, to get you a $25 discount. These are our speakers. We have Morgan Housel, who's the author of The Psychology of Money. If you haven't checked that out, it's a really interesting book. John Maxfield with The Motley Fool, Dr. Cy Richardson with National Urban League, Andrea Alexander, who's with Tribal Technologies Training here in Washington State, Chris Moreno and Darren Liddell from Catalyst Miami. And then our closing panel is going to be fascinating, and we actually just finalized the panel yesterday. It will be moderated by Erwin Reeves from the FDIC, and we'll have Sean Crehan from the San Francisco Fed, Gosha Tomaszewska from Commonwealth, and then Katie Neal from Plaid. So we will have really, nonprofit, government, and for-profit perspectives. And the theme of the theme of our conference this year is FinTech, and really thinking about the ways that technology can increase not just access for folks who might be unbanked or historically marginalized from banking services, but really how can we use technology or how can we leverage technology to help folks along the continuum of financial well-being? So it's going to be a really fascinating conversation about what is happening, now, and what the future holds, what research is telling us. So please join us. And then we have our next workshop on November 10th with Julia Kellison of Northwest Justice Project, and that will be really talking about all types of consumer debt issues. So we'll be talking about medical debt and charity care, but also garnishments and collections. Our plan is to do kind of a really broad, not as deep survey of all of the changes that have happened over the last couple of years, because there's been some policy changes here in Washington State regarding how folks can collect money. And so we're going to use that as sort of a jumping off point for 2022. So once we, kind of hear some of the overview of that, we'll be doing some deeper dives into those topics next year. And I will try and find the links. I have so many things open. I will put them in the chat, the links to register for those. Okay, and then I want to open it up in our last minute, and I'm sorry that we ran short on time, but if there are other folks that have announcements, updates, information, things that your organization is doing that you would like to share, we would love to hear from you. We want to know what's happening, in other organizations. All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. Thank you, Terrence, so much for all of this information. It's super helpful to get the background on what's happening with the taxes, what the plan is for 2022 and how we can help folks access their money now. So thank you very much for joining us today. And thank you to all of you for being here. I appreciate it. If you, like I said, please fill out the survey. And if you have any other questions, you're always welcome to reach out to me. And yeah, thank you. Have a wonderful afternoon.